It's working, right? Okay, cool. I need to, my wife got me this jacket, so I have to ask you guys. This is the pocket. And it's like you pull it inside out and it turns to a pocket square. Should I leave it out or do I put it back in? Do I have votes? Leave it out? Okay, I'll leave it out. All right, cool, awesome. Hi, so I'm Michel Nischan, and what I'm mostly known for is cooking, but I came to it rather naturally. I grew up on what was left of my grandfather's farm. What's going on, brother? Sorry, I have to do this. How's it going, man? Awesome. Wow, we got some rock stars in the room today. This is like really cool. So anyway, grew up working what was left of my grandfather's farm down in Morley, Missouri every summer, and that's where I learned how to braise and cure and pickle and butcher and hunt and fish and turn compost and drive a tractor and do all of those things. My parents fell on hard times right when I was graduating high school, and my older brother and I had to move out of the house because they had to downsize. We had a younger brother and a younger sister, and my mom's like, "You're going to be just fine. You can cook. Get a job in a restaurant. At least you'll eat." So I did that, and it didn't take long. That was in 1979, and by 1981, at age 22, I became the executive chef of a French restaurant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin called the Fleur de Lis. It was remarkable, but the interesting thing for me was those 3 years that I spent working in kitchens as a cook. I noticed how horrible the food was coming in the back door. It's just perfectly round tomatoes that were like pink and hard and mealy and really not that tasty. The cucumbers were kind of like dried and shriveled, and you could do all kinds of things as a chef to make something that's not so good taste good, but imagine if you can start with a really great base ingredient. So I went out into the countryside, which is not far still this day from Milwaukee. You can drive 30 minutes and get to a farm, and started knocking on doors to try to find farmers who had family vegetable plots or a vegetable garden that I could buy from, and there weren't any. So back in 1980 and 1981, the words social and enterprise never went together. Impact investing had nothing to do with any kind of an impact other than profit or shareholder return. These weren't words that went together. And I've learned that what I was doing back there was very much in the spirit of what social enterprise is all about. Knocking on doors, offering farmers who remembered what it was like to grow tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and other stuff, to pay them in advance so that they would grow stuff for me, so that I could have the types of ingredients that I could believe in, that I could sell to my customers and have them be very, very happy. So I started experimenting that way, and then it grew to building a community of practitioners, reaching out to other chefs. And trust me, back in the 80s, the chef business was highly competitive. We didn't talk to each other, we didn't look at each other, we didn't even want to acknowledge that there was any other chef than ourselves. But if we really wanted to change the supply chain, we really needed to see the type of aggregated market support that could put land back into the production so that you could see 300 different varieties of beautiful heirloom tomatoes. So we did that, and I did that for quite a long time, just thinking that it was normal for me to do because I wanted good food on my plate. An interesting turn for me was when my son Chris, at age 5, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I remember being scared when I went to the doctor and had that first really important conversation, and all she did was talk about food. And she said, you're in great shape because you're a chef, and what you do with Chris's food will have more to do with the success of his long-term outcome than any other thing that you do. And I'm like, wow, I got this. And I was excited about it, and I started, working at home with my wife, with my family, figuring out what we could do for Chris. And then I'm kind of like going into the restaurant and looking at what I'm cooking for everybody else and saying, this isn't working for me, because why would I feed many tens of thousands of people a year what I wouldn't feed my son? So back in 1997, I partnered with Drew Nieporn right here in New York City in the First W Hotel and opened Heartbeat Restaurant, which was a restaurant of local, organic, sustainable, but well-being, no processed food of any kind. And it was very bold at the time. This is 1997. Some of you might not even have been born then, I'm thinking. We have some young talent in the room. But, it was a big move at the time, and it was really risky. But what we found is that every time we would make And I say we because my wife has always been behind this. I have dear trusted advisors who are deep personal friends of mine, helped me through these times in my life where I couldn't reconcile, or I needed to reconcile what I knew to be right for humans and the planet and all of these other things, but also was responsible for running a profitable business. I was a social entrepreneur. And in 1997, those words still were not being put together. Social enterprise, impact investment, anything outside of a bottom line, it just wasn't there. So, it was interesting to me. In the early days, it was all about kind of restoring farm culture and protecting the environment. So food kind of like equaled this beautiful environmental impact and really restoring the kind of sense of place through farming culture. Chris got sick, learned about food's impact on human health. The more I went along doing the business at Heartbeat, you start learning about food's impact on things, and then you start looking at the way wages work and living wages or lack of equity, and how do you get people at all rungs of the restaurant ladder to participate in your business in ways that they can have a whole and meaningful life, and there's a pathway, a ladder to success for them, whatever that might be for their own dreams. So we started screwing around with stuff like paying 75% above market for entry-level positions. This is like living wage type stuff, right? Budgeting and scheduling overtime, and then paying 15 to 20% less at the top so that we could unplug and turn over at the top and then move everybody else up from the inside. What we learned in doing that is that shrinkage went away, food waste went way down, breakage went way down, and we didn't pay all the training costs of hiring seasonal staff and laying people off. That's social enterprise. So it's interesting, and a lot of it was just survival mechanism. We got tired of losing good people. We really wanted to bring in new workforce at the entry level that could be passionate about everything that we were doing. So that's the way I ran the life of a restaurateur. And then I had my phenomenon at Heartbeat that really changed my life big time. We had been open for 3 years. I started participating with Harvard School for Public Health on their think tank because I was the only chef in the country cooking for well-being other than Graham Kerr. and he didn't have a restaurant. Jeffrey remembers Graham Kerr. I'm not trying to date you, Jeffrey, but Anyway, he was a pioneer at the time. And I started learning about type 2 diabetes and how type 2 diabetes could actually be prevented through food. You could stop it in the early phases. If you're pre-diabetic, you change your diet, you won't get diabetes. If you're in the early stages of diabetes, 70% of people can reverse it through food. If you're in the late stages, all of the amputations and the horrible things, the organ failure that happen from having the disease for a long time can be highly mitigated through food. And then I learned that 2/3 of people who suffer from it, which now represents about 25 million Americans, don't have a personal income that would allow them to make that choice. So here I am at this white tablecloth restaurant charging people $50 an entree, thinking I'm doing good things, local, organic, sustainable, cuisine of well-being, we can change the world, only if you can afford $50 for an entree. So that's the energy that led to founding Wholesome Wave. So I'll just a little bit about Wholesome Wave, and then we'll move on to the cohort for today. But what we did with Wholesome Wave was really started experimenting in underserved communities of consumers to figure out what was the barrier for people to make the healthier choice. Was it lack of access? Was it lack of education? All these things that we looked at, and what we learned is that it really was about affordability. That was the simple thing, that if we could solve affordability, people would travel great distances to get healthier food for their families. We learned that underserved consumers, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Somali, Hmong, Cambodian, doesn't matter where they're from, want to feed their families well. They just need to be able to pull the trigger on the economic decision to do so. So we started a 2-for-1 fruit and vegetable sale, started doubling the value of food stamps when spent at a farmer's market on locally grown fruits and vegetables, creating fruit and vegetable prescriptions that doctors could prescribe at public hospitals and community health centers. And the programs were so wildly successful, there are now 1,500 farmers markets out of the 8,800 in the country in food deserts. And last year, the federal farm bill passed with $100 million in federal funding to double food stamps on fruits and vegetables at farmers markets. Yes! Yeah. So That's impact. That's impact. So everybody that's here that's in this cohort, that's what you're working towards. That's what you're working towards. Here's the cool thing about this community, right? We're not competing with each other in this room. We're competing with this alternative model that's kind of been ruling the world of business for the last 5-6 decades, right? That's what we're competing with. So when you look at the things that FOOD-X has been able to do for each and every one of you, you guys can work together in a space, share ideas, share resources, share contacts, share connection, share your passion, genuine enthusiasm. You guys came to the table with the DNA or you wouldn't be in the cohort, so you had the DNA. But now you've got this community of practice, this transparency that allows you guys to work together to solve some of these bigger issues of how do we reimagine the world through food. This one single subject that has more impact on human health, societal health, community health, everything, you name it. You fix food, you fix everything. So this is what you guys get to face today. This is what you get to face in this next phase as you look to get up and do your pitch. You know, all of the energy that you've been gathering in your learnings is behind making your individual business successful. But when you look at the power of the cohort, and when you're unleashed in the world at large, and there are more cohorts to come, and you stay engaged in this community, you're all going to be part of changing the world through food. So I checked out some of the businesses out there. Pretty freaking cool. I love it. I downloaded one of the apps. What was it called? Something Bowl? Kitchen Bowl? Yeah, neat. There's some really great stuff out there. And, you know, I wish you guys were around when I was back, like, doing Heartbeat. You know, it's like we could have been calling each other. We could have been, like, solving so many things together. You have that now. That's really powerful. So the one thing that I'll say to you before I close is that one of the only mistakes you can make being in a community like this is not really accessing the community, not picking up the phone, not emailing, not calling, not talking, not gathering together as the community of entrepreneurs that you are. There's brilliance in this room, and there's tons of opportunity out there. Walmart, this is so few people know about this pledge from Walmart. When they made the pledge to the Partnership for a Healthier America, by the end of 2015, they wanted to have 15% of all of their fresh food come from within 150 miles of their regional redistribution warehouses. Walmart got into the local business. They're already at 18.5%. They're beating it. And Walmart doesn't have a yuppie aisle. They don't niche market. They received $20 billion in food stamps last year. So if they're saying local is important, it's important to all their customers. There's unmet demand. There's talent in this room. So I charge all of you and encourage all of you to stay together, be this powerful force, and go out and change the world through food. Thank you.